Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. How's this for a good news story? Next week, 21-year-old Australian Travis Bazzana is tipped to become the number one Major League Baseball draft pick in the US, and that's expected to come with a $15 million bonus. That's just for signing a deal. The amount of money in US sport is really quite phenomenal. Just in the past couple of weeks, basketball superstar LeBron James signed a new $104 million two-year deal with the LA Lakers. Whenever we talk about the business of sport, we go to John Stensholt, business reporter at The Australian. John, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thank you, Sean.
I know you're a baseball fan. What do you make of the Travis Bazzana story?
I think it's a fantastic story. It's an amazing story for the sport of baseball to get that sort of, name at the top of this draft, right? I mean, the draft is interesting. He's going to get that huge bonus, as you say, and then hopefully spend a few years in the minor leagues and work his way into the majors and be a big star where, you know, people are getting paid $30, $40, $50 million US a year. So it's only the beginning. He could definitely be our biggest earning athlete pretty soon.
What's it do for Australian baseball?
Oh, look, I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those sports where it's a Australian sports star that doesn't ply their trade here in Australia. So you think of our soccer stars that are, you know, big names in Europe, you know, other athletes like, you know, there's about a dozen Australians playing in the NBA basketball in America. It can be a little bit out of sight, out of mind. But I think with the basketball in particular, you know, it's become very popular here in Australia to watch on TV at pretty good times. Look, we don't have a huge pedigree in baseball. We did win a silver medal in 2004. In Athens, I think it was. And, you know, there's been a smattering of good players and all-stars over the years, but, you know, Travis has got the potential to be our best yet. And I think he's also got that drive and determination to want to grow the game here in Australia and give it some star billing. So I think, you know, from a commercial point of view, he'll make all his money in America probably. But, you know, if he can be a bit of a household name in Australia too, it'll be a bit of a bonus, I think.
Now, I know we're a business podcast, but is Travis the real deal, do you reckon, John?
Oh, I think he's a fantastic hitter. I mean, he could go number one, right, which is in the draft, which is incredible. It's happened in basketball. We've had, you know, Ben Simmons, number one, Andrew Bogut as well. So basketball's, you know, very big. Baseball's still huge in America too. You know, we've got big NFL players like, you know, Jordan Mateo as well. So, look, he is the real deal. He could go anywhere between number one and number 4 or 5. It's funny. Everyone talks about, you know, the old Moneyball book based on the Oakland Athletics, and they picked number 4, and they're a bit of a dregs of a franchise at the moment, which is unfortunate because I was a fan of theirs, but they're moving to Las Vegas. So if he ends up there, I'll be a bit worried, but it's probably smooth his way to the major leagues quicker and, you know, more money eventually.
Of course, I'm a Yankees fan, and John and I, we've discussed baseball for many years. We all certainly hope Travis does well. A Sydney North Shore local. What about basketball? We talk about LeBron James, 39-year-old, $52 million a year. I mean, to be honest, in basketball terms, it's not one of the great contracts, but for a 39-year-old, it is definitely the greatest contract. How can there be so much money in that sport?
Well, it's all about broadcast deals. So the NBA is about to double its broadcast deal. It's probably going to sign ESPN, potentially Amazon. There's TNT over in America. It's got maybe a last right. So there's huge competition for, you know, the broadcast rights, you know, that come with that. And it's a global sport as well. You know, there's so many good European players and Australians clearly too. But, you know, the TV money in America is extraordinary. So if you think of that doubling your biggest revenue source to, I think it's something like $70-odd billion or something crazy like that over the term of the contract, it brings in a lot of money for the players. And there's only, you know, 12 players on a team usually, including the bench and maybe a few others that, you know, that come in and off the injured reserve. So there's a lot of money going around to only a handful of, you know, big name athletes. That's why they're on those huge contracts.
Stay with me, John. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to John Stensholt from The Australian. Staying in basketball, back home we've got Tesla chair Robin Denholm and Larry Kesselman buying the women's NBL, the Women's Basketball League. Can you make money out of that sort of league in Australia, or is it a labour of love, do you think?
Oh, look, there's probably an altruistic element to it, particularly with Robin, who, you know, is, you know, very interested in backing women's sport. Basketball is a huge thing for her. They're taking a majority stake in the league that probably values at around about the 23 million mark. So it's not a massive amount of money when you compare it to America, but it is pretty substantial, you know, in Australian terms. I mean, some of the private clubs in rugby league or, basketball, in the NBL, the men's competition have been valued, around that $40 million mark. So look, if you're dealing in US dollars, it's probably a cheap entry point in Australian sport, and you become an owner of a team. So I think you'll see more Americans investing in Australian basketball. But for a league, I think for a start, it's saving the league. And if there's someone that can, do a good job of, growing it, I think it's Robin with that passion for the sport and, having that female entrepreneur behind it. And also Larry, who's, operates a, pretty successful league already in the NBL. So it's a pretty good combination. And I think it'll get better. Is whether it'll get to be, massive is a different question altogether. Probably not. It'll never be compared to an AFL or NRL or anything like that. But I think it can carve out a really good niche at the very least.
In Australia, you mentioned the AFL there and the NRL. Are there only a handful of sports which can actually get huge amounts of money off broadcast deals and be big money sports? Then the follow-up question to that, John, is do you think the AFL and the NRL even more so can keep getting those sorts of broadcast deals?
Look, question number one is that, yes, it's really just a handful of sports. AFL, NRL, probably cricket now. Rugby unions, out to the market again. Their TV deal may be break even to what it is now at best, may go backwards. Definitely the two winter codes, big money sports, they will definitely still attract a lot of eyeballs. But I think the nuance to that is by the time the next contract negotiations come up, what will the free-to-air television networks look like? Channel 7 is, it's a $270 million company these days on the stock exchange. Channel 9 has been, cutting staff and trying to cut costs. So the question is can those big TV networks still afford to pay out those big money rights for sports? And if they can't, well, can an Australian sport like the AFL try to get a Netflix or an Amazon to actually pay out some money for, what is a niche sport in Australia? It's a very, very difficult question to answer right now. It really depends on what the TV landscape looks like and where those sports fit into some of those bigger global brand scenarios or strategies.
Some of the best athletes that don't get paid much are the Olympians. And John, I know you're heading over to Paris in the next few weeks. I'm very jealous. What about the Olympians? And we've had Michael Johnson, the former 200, 400 metre world record holder, the US world record holder, come out and he's trying to develop a Grand Slam event. We've had World Athletics trying to put more money into it. I believe that the gold medalists or some of the medalists this year will be actually in track and field will be earning money. Is the Olympics just a labour of love outside basketball and a few odd sports like that where obviously they've got professionals in it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's something like half of Australia's athletes, earn something, lower than $30,000 a year. It is, it's the parents have to support them. They get sponsors to a certain amount. There's government funding. There's what they call the dais funding, which is, for athletes that are on the dais, the bronze, silver or gold medals. And that actually tops out at around about the $35,000 mark each year. So it's not a massive amount of money for, some of these other sports that are, pretty popular, like the hockeys of the world or other, Olympic sports like the volleyballs. Maybe a swimmer, some of the swimmers do get some pretty big, sponsorship deals. I think the days of like an Ian Thorpe or a Grant Hackett getting paid millions of dollars is probably over for now. It's harder going. Government funding is always subject to, politics. Brisbane 2032 is a carrot for the athletes, but also for, potential backers. So maybe there'll be some better news off that. But I think the issue these days is those professional sports like AFL, NRL and cricket in particular can pay their younger athletes more than the Olympic sports. So that's why you're seeing a bit of a drain of players going to those sports these days.
One final, just football, as in soccer. We've got the Euros, we've got Spain, England over the weekend coming up. Soccer in Australia, though, that seems to have ebbed and flowed, and it seems to be ebbing. I'm not quite sure which one I'm saying here, John, but yeah, it's not at its high, let's face it.
No, and look, the A-League, which I've written about in the last couple of months, and they spent $140 million of private equity money that, it's now gone in 2.5 years. It just shows you the cash burn of, what these leagues, they're a little bit like, tech startups that burn through a lot of money trying to grow early on and trying to compete with the bigger sports. And that's the problem. So, yeah, soccer's got its issues again. The money's run out. They've had to cut back the distribution to all the clubs. So, again, player wages will go down and, it's tougher times. The money is really going to just a handful of big sports here these days.
And very different to Europe, though. Those Spanish millionaires and the English millionaires. John, I'm going to ask for a prediction on that. Spain or England?
Oh, I think the Spanish passing game and their midfield and their couple of young wingers they've got are just sensational. I can't see England getting past them, and quite frankly, it's a bit more humorous to see England losing in some of these big tournaments. Right?
John, is there any sporting question or rich list of question I can ever ask you don't have the answer for?
Oh, probably not, Sean. No, I'll do my best.
Thank you very much for talking to Fear and Greed, and enjoy the Olympics.
Thank you.
That was John Stensholt, business reporter at The Australian. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for a full episode of Fear and Greed, business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.